Hey guys, this is Alan, and today's topic is about cold protection and how to protect your plants from the cold. There is a difference between frost protection and cold protection. If you cover your plants from frost and they took damage, even with the covering like frost cloth or sheets on top of thing, and they still took damage in the winter, that means your plants are cold sensitive. A plant that is cold sensitive, the only way to protect it is by changing the ambient temperature around your plant. There is no other way to protect a cold sensitive plant. If you're growing tropical plants in areas where it gets cold in the winter, you're going to have to do this. Some plants, as they get older, they will be able to handle the cold a little better, depending on how cold you get in your area. Other plants, you will have to protect them from the cold every single winter. Now, cold protection. There are two ways to protect your plants from the cold. The first one is by using natural microclimates, and the second one is by creating those microclimates. Now let's talk about natural microclimates. If you look on this side right here, this is an ash tree right here. Now, underneath the canopy of this plant right here, it's actually a few degrees warmer than being out there in the open. And the reason why is because this canopy right here, it retains the heat being radiated from the ground. So a lot of the heat gets trapped in this area instead of escaping out in the atmosphere. So any plants that I put in here, they're gonna have a warmer microclimate than being out there in the open. How much warmer? Well, that depends on the actual temperatures outside, guys. So let's say your temperatures for tonight are expected to be 32 degrees. Now in this little area, it may be 35 degrees. But the only way to know 100% is by, one, never rely on the forecast. The forecast is just an average. You're going to have to buy yourself some thermometers and place them in different areas of your yard so you can actually record your temperatures in the winter. Every single winter, your temperatures are going to be different. But they will actually tell you what areas in your yard are going to be actually warmer or colder during the winter. Areas closer to your house, closer to concrete structures, closer to a block wall, underneath the canopies of other plants, just like this one right here, are always going to be warmer during the winter than if you had your plants out there in the open where the heat just keeps completely out in the atmosphere. So that is a natural microclimate. Now, you also have to understand tropical plants. Plants are living beings just like you and I, and all plants are going to react differently in the winter. Even plants within the same varieties will take cold damage sooner or later than others, and you just won't know until you actually grow your plant. So if you want to rely 100% on natural microclimates, I only recommend doing that if you know 100% what your actual microclimates are in your yard. That means you have been recording your microclimates for a few years and you know exactly how hot or how cold the areas in different areas of your yard are. If you're not sure, guys, if this is the first winter going with your tropical trees, then the second choice is by artificially creating those microclimates. My area here, I live in Queen Creek, Arizona. About 3-mile radius, it's 10 degrees colder than the forecast. We have a forecast tomorrow night of 31 degrees. That is a sign that I look for to start cold protecting my plants, because 31 degree forecast, for me, it could mean all the way down to 21 degrees. Anytime you get into the mid-20s to low 20s and you have cold sensitive plants, you're going to have to protect them, because if you don't, they will take damage or even completely die. So, option number 2, artificially protecting your plants. If you actually come this way, you can see our structure that we're starting to build. This is a cold structure. You can think of it as a temporary greenhouse that we build around our trees in the ground every single winter. Now this structure right here, we're going to wrap with frost cloth. You can use plastic, you can use sheets, You can use anything that you have that will actually retain the heat inside the structure. So we're technically building a greenhouse in the ground. We do this with all our plants in the ground that are cold sensitive. I have mango trees in the ground that are cold sensitive. I have all kinds of plants that are cold sensitive in the ground. If I don't protect them like this in the winter, I wouldn't be able to grow them here in my area because my microclimate here is way too cold for these tropical plants. So what I'm doing by building this structure here, I'm actually changing the ambient temperature around the plant. Once the structure is completely built, completely enclosed, the temperature inside the structure will be a few degrees warmer than out here. So let's say you live in an area where your temperatures drop into the high 20s briefly, maybe 1 to 3 hours, and then they go right back up. The structure alone should be sufficient in your area. You're not gonna need anything else. Now, let's say you built a structure, you cover everything, and then your tree still takes damage inside that structure. That means it got way too cold inside that structure and your plant took damage, like it has here in my area. At that point, guys, you're going to have to use an external heat source. A lot of people talk about using Christmas lights for winter protection. Christmas lights nowadays are mostly LEDs. It's not about the heat source that you use, it's about how many watts or how many BTUs the actual heat source outputs. Most Christmas lights here that I've seen personally, they go all the way to about 70 watts. 70 watts, guys, it's not enough heat output to make a difference inside the structure to keep your plant warm during the winter. A lot of people ask me all the time if they can use Christmas lights, and my response is, plants are just like you. So when it's cold outside, go outside, wrap yourself around with Christmas lights, turn them on. If you feel warmer, then whatever method you use, whether it be Christmas lights or not, then it's gonna work. Now, if you're still cold, guys, what do you think your plant is? It will still be cold. So Christmas lights is not gonna be the best way to actually use as a heat source. Personally, what I use, if you look over here, I have different types of heat sources right here. Now, this is the most common one that I use. This one right here, it's an electric heater. This is 500 watts. 500 watts, it's about 1 watt is actually 1 BTU is 3.4 watts. So this is about almost about 1600 BTUs, and this is enough to keep my plants warm in the winter. Just 500 watts. This is like a small space heater. Now the problem with this one is, yeah, you're gonna have to have an electrical source close by, an outlet. So if you don't have one, you're gonna have to get an extension cord. So what I do usually is, when I know I'm going to drop into the low 20s, I get my heater and I put it out here. And then usually I don't put it straight on the ground because I don't want it to catch on fire. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna get a piece of a paver and I'm gonna sit it on top and I turn it on right before I go to bed and shut it off in the morning. This increases the temperature inside the structure by about 10 degrees easily. So if it's like, you know, if it's 19 degrees out here, it will be in the high 20s inside the structure, or maybe a little warmer depending how cold it gets outside. And that's pretty much enough to keep my plant alive through the winter. It may not be enough to make it grow in the winter, but at least it's not dying. So this is one of the kinds of heaters that you can use, guys. 500 watts electric heater, and it works great, especially if you don't have that many plants. Now, let's say you have a plant that's far away. You don't have an outlet, and the extension cord you have is not long enough. The other method you can do that you can use as a heat source is going to be a propane heater. This one right here, it's 3000 BTUs, which equals to about 888 watts. It's a little hotter than this electric heater over here by about 300 watts. So you just got to keep it away from your plant, and one canister, which is 1 pound, will last you overnight. So on the nights that I know I'm gonna be really cold, I get the heater on right before I go to bed. I put it in the corner of the structure because I don't want it too close to the tree because I don't want to burn the trunk. And then that's enough to keep the temperatures from freezing inside the structure. And that's another way you can actually use. Other methods that you can use are a bigger propane heater. So let's say that your tree it's too big to cover, guys. Like my rainbow eucalyptus that I have over here, I'll show you. So this tree right here, it's about 11-12 feet tall. It's way too big to cover. Now, rainbow eucalyptus in my area, they can take temperatures into the low 20s, no problem. The problem you're going to have is usually when you stay at those temperatures for too long, then the ice is gonna start building up on your plant, and that's actually gonna, it's gonna damage your plant, and you don't want that because it's gonna set you back. So what I do, I don't like building a structure for this plant because, well, every year it will grow many feet. So it's just gonna get way too big for you to protect. So the other way you can do is you can get one of those small heaters that I showed you earlier, or you can get this one right here. Put it further away from your plant and turn it on. That will actually heat up this whole area, and it will prevent it from freezing and the ice actually building up on your plant. It's not gonna be as efficient as if you actually built a structure, but this plant right here, it can tolerate a lot of cold. So this is only for like extremely cold nights that I only get here every few years. It's not every single winter, but when I do, I have a plan B right here. So let's say your plant is way too big and you don't want to build a structure. This is another way of actually protecting your plant from the cold. Because just like you, if you were standing in front of it, it's gonna feel warm, your plant's gonna feel warm, and it's not gonna take cold damage. Now, we have this structure right here that we're gonna be building right now. I'm gonna show you exactly how we build it, what materials we use, and if you wanna do the same thing, you can. If you have other ways to do it, it doesn't really matter what way you wanna do it. As long as you build a frame that you can actually attach your material to and close it, it's all that you need. I like to use this because I can reuse it every single year. And it's very easy to put up, very easy to take down, and like I said, I reuse it every single year on different plants, and it's not the cheapest option. So if that's what you're looking for, guys, I'm sorry, but there's no other way around it. Especially if you want to grow cold sensitive plants, it's not a cheap hobby. Anyways, let me show you what I actually use here. So the first thing you're gonna need, guys, is gonna be rebar. Now, what size rebar you use, it doesn't really matter. This is the cheapest I can find. This is 3/8 by whatever length you wanna use. Now, this is a 10-footer right here. Usually, if you buy it at the store, it's about $4 to $5. Now, what I do is I cut this in half, and then I pound it in the ground, at least a foot deep. Then the next thing I do, I put 4 pieces in the ground, 1 in each corner. And then I get a 1/2-inch PVC pipe, and then I slide it right over it. Usually, depending on how tall your structure is, you want the actual rebar sticking out the ground, at least I would say 2 to 3 feet off the ground. So that way it gives your structure some support, so when it gets windy, it's not gonna fly away. And that's pretty much all you gotta do. I like the rebar, especially in areas where it's hard to dig, because it's a lot easier to pound it in the ground than, let's say, a wooden post or something like that. Now, you get your PVC pipe, you drop it on top of the rebar just like this, and that makes up the actual frame of your structure. Now, if you look on the top, in each corner, you can see I have 3-way elbows there. Now, those elbows are not really that hard to find. You just gotta know exactly what you're looking for. I got a box right here that can show you exactly what the name is. They call this one Every store has their own name for them. This one's called a 90-degree elbow with side outlet. Now, I also seen them as three-way elbows. It doesn't really matter what you call them. You just gotta make sure that they look just like this. Now, what you're gonna do is you're gonna put that in each corner up there, and that's gonna connect your frame up there to the post in the ground. Once you get that done, that is pretty much your structure for the whole winter, guys. Now, in areas where it gets windy, another thing that I like to show people is you're gonna have to tie the corners together just like this. Let me show you. So you get yourself some twine, rope, whatever you have. It doesn't really matter. And then you want to tie all the corners together. Just like that. So you're gonna do one corner to the other, and then you're gonna do the other one to the other corner over there, just like crossing each other. And the reason you do this is because sometimes when it gets windy, the wind is gonna push against your structure, and if it's really strong winds, it could actually detach your elbows on top, and then your whole structure is gonna come down. So to prevent that, I tie the corners together so that way if I have any wind at all, it will prevent it from bowing out too much and then coming apart. The main thing with these structures right here is to block the wind from actually getting inside your structure. You want to cover everything as much as possible to block the wind completely. Because if the wind gets inside your structure, what usually happens is it will pressurize the air inside the structure and it will blow it out. So you don't want that to happen in the middle of the night, especially if you put all this time into protecting your plant. So tie the corners together. That prevents them from bowing out too much in the wind. And the next step is pretty much just putting the cover on the sides and then on the top. So let me go ahead and set up the camera right now so you guys can actually see how I do it. Now, before I actually put the cover on, you can use anything, guys. You can use plastic like a greenhouse. You can use sheets. You can use anything to hold the heat inside the structure. Now, what I use right here, this is frost cloth. If you watch my other videos, you've seen this before. I use this on everything. And the reason I do is because, well, I bought it in bulk. I have a lot of it. Now, this frost cloth right here, it has gotten my mango tree through 19 degrees with a heater, a 500-watt heater in there. So it will hold the heat inside, even though it has little holes to allow the air through. It will still hold the heat inside the structure, so you don't really have to worry too much about it. I don't like to use plastic because plastic is expensive, and it will usually only last you about a season unless you use the UV rated plastic, which is very expensive anyway. Now, if you only have one plant, by all means, go ahead and do it. If you drop in the low teens, maybe single digits, maybe in the negatives, at that point, guys, obviously this is not gonna work for you. I have only tested this down to 19 degrees. If you get colder than that, at that point you're probably going to have to need to use plastic, because plastic will hold the heat a lot better than this. And on top of that, you're probably gonna have to have more than one heater inside the structure. Instead of maybe 500 watts, you're probably gonna need 1,000 watts in there, or you're gonna need 2 propane heaters in there, or you're probably gonna need a bigger heater in there. It all depends on how cold your temperatures are outside and how long they stay at those temperatures. So the best way to know exactly how much heat you need inside the structure is based on the outside temperatures. Like I said, if your temperatures are in the single digits or lower, well, obviously you're gonna have to put a lot more heat inside the structure. Get a thermometer, place it inside the structure, and just record the temperatures for at least the first night. Get one of those digital thermometers that you can put the receiver out here and you can track the temperatures inside your house. And then as long as they stay in the high 20s or the low 20s, you should be fine depending on the type of tree that you have. If you're growing a mango tree, that's fine, guys. Mango trees, they can take low 30s easily, high 20s briefly, as long as you block the wind and they don't get direct frost on them. Anyways, let me go ahead and set this up right now so you guys can actually see how I do my stuff. Alright guys, so the structure is almost done. You cover the sides, cover the top, and this is pretty much your cold structure. Now, I've been using this frost cloth for a few years now, so you can see I have a few holes. So usually what I do, I get some tape, duct tape, whatever you have, greenhouse tape. It doesn't really matter what you use, and then I'm just gonna plug those up. I'm not really too worried about the tree inside the structure. That tree is a silk floss. It's second winter. I planted it late last year, so it really didn't start growing until this year. And usually that tree in my area is frost sensitive mainly. It can take temperatures down to 19 degrees based on my experience. But usually what happens is the cold wind and the frost will damage it. Now the tree can handle it, especially if it's a warm winter in the mid-20s. But I'm just playing it safe. I want the tree to thrive, and I'm just building a cold structure. And that's about it, guys. I won't be doing this for this tree next year, because next year is going to be easily twice to three times as big. It's going to be way too big just to cover. So at that point, whatever damage that it takes from frost in the winter, I'm just going to cut it up. But the process for cold protection, it's going to be the same. You need to build a structure to hold the heat in, and that's about it. There's no other way to protect your cold sensitive plant in the winter. Now, how long do you need to do this for your plant? In my experience, you will always have to do this for your plant forever if your plant is cold sensitive. If you live in an area where it gets cold in the winter, you may not get that cold every single winter, but if you do get really cold one night, you will lose everything you work for. So it's always better to play it safe than to just, hope that the plant will make it. If you're not sure if this is your first winter with your plant, I highly recommend you to build that cold structure, use a heater, and then get a thermometer, place it outside your structure, and record your temperatures for at least that one winter. That will tell you exactly how much work you're going to have to do to keep that plant alive during the winter time. If the temperatures in your area are in the high 20s, low 30s, you won't have to really work that hard, guys. Now, if you drop into the low 20s, in the teens, single digits, at that point, you will have to put a heat source in there because your plant will still take damage because inside the structure it's going to get too cold. Now, when building this type of structure, what I like to do personally is I like to leave an opening just like this so I can get in there, turn my heater on, turn it off, check the plant, see how it's doing. And the opening, usually I like to put it somewhere facing away from the wind. So a lot of the wind for this area here comes from that way. My house is right here, so it provides a lot of wind block. So this is exactly where the opening is facing. So that way the wind won't come in through this way and it may open the structure up. So what I like to do, I just bundle all the leftover just like this, and then put a clamp in there, and then do the same on the bottom. Done. So this plant right here, it's ready for the winter. Like I said, guys, if your plant is cold sensitive, you will always have to do this every single winter if you get cold in your area. I live in Arizona. There are a lot of areas in here in Arizona where they hardly ever drop below freezing. Glendale, Phoenix, parts of Mesa, Chandler, Gilbert. Those are cities here within Arizona where the temperatures hardly ever drop below freezing. So a lot of people over there, they grow their mangoes out there in the open, and they don't really have to do this, put that much work into their plants during the winter because they simply don't get that cold. Like I said, here in my area, I get really cold, so I have to do this every winter for all my cold sensitive plants. Anyways, let me show you another structure that we built. It's right this way. This one here is my mango tree. It's 10 feet tall, and we built this structure about a little over a week ago. We have to do this for this mango tree every single winter because, well, it's cold sensitive. I learned the hard way. The first winter I threw a sheet over it, and guess what? It died back almost all the way down. Thankfully, it didn't die completely. It took about 2 years for that tree to come back. But in that time, I learned the difference between frost protection and cold protection. So since then, I take no chances. I build the structure every single winter. This structure, like I said, is good into the high 20s, low 30s briefly. But if I think my temperatures are going to drop into the mid 20s to low 20s, even lower, at that point, I put the heater in there. Now the structure is built the same way as the other one. I have rebar in the ground, PVC pipes sliding over, and then the three-way elbows on the top connecting everything together. Now, how long do you need to keep the structure out? That depends on your area. If you're here in Arizona, usually first week of December, that's when we start putting our structures up. And the structure stays just like this all the way through the winter into second to third week of March. Sometimes we get warm earlier in the season, so I take the structure out. But usually I don't do that unless I check the weather and the weather shows like there are no chances of frost and the temperatures look like they're going up every single night. That usually doesn't happen until sometime in March. Sometimes we got in frost all the way into second week of March. So that's why I usually recommend to keep your structures all the way through mid-March, because guess what's gonna happen if you take it down because it's being hot and then one night you get frost and you forget to put it back up. Your plant is gonna take damage and you just lost everything you worked for. I don't open the structure up. I don't do anything besides check maybe there once a week to make sure that I need to water the plant or how the plant's doing. A lot of people worry about using plastic and the heat. Here in Arizona, our day temperatures are always hot during the winter. So your temperatures inside the structure, they can go all the way up to 100 degrees, especially if the day temperatures are 80 degrees. Now, that's not gonna kill your plant, guys. Our normal temperatures here in the summer are over 100 degrees for months on end. It will never get as hot inside the structure as it does here during the summer. Your plant's not going to die, I promise you. The only thing that's gonna happen is your plant's going to get hot just like you would if you were inside the structure during daytime, and just like you, it will drink more water. So you may have to water it more often than any other plant that you have that is not within a cold structure like this one. Another question that I get all the time is if you need to open this up to let the sun in. Don't worry about the sun, guys. Your plant's not going to grow if it lacks temperature. Most plants need light and temperatures in order to grow. If you only have one, your plant's not gonna grow the greatest or even at all. So here, when our night temperatures are cold, most tropical plants, they completely stop growing. But remember, that's based on your microclimate. Obviously, if you're hot in your area during the winter, your plants are still gonna grow. But remember, it's because you have light and temperature. Here, I don't have the night temperature, so my plants are not going to grow. Even if this mango tree is in full darkness for the whole winter, it's not going to die. It's not going to hinder the growth of the plant because it's not going to grow anyway. So usually our growing season doesn't start until the night temperatures are a little warmer, about 50, 60 degrees, and that's when the plants wake up and then they start growing again. So I don't open this up, I don't do anything besides check the plant every once in a while and water it. And that's exactly how I protect my cold sensitive plants. And if you're growing cold sensitive plants, you probably should do the same. If it's the first winter, guys, and you're not sure if your plant is frost sensitive or cold sensitive, assume your plant is cold sensitive and fully protected. Like I said earlier, put some thermometers outside, record your temperatures, and maybe next winter you're not going to have to do that much work because you probably don't get that cold. But you know what, if you do get that cold, at least you are proactive, you protected your plant, and then guess what, you didn't kill your plant like most people do. Remember, a plant that's rooted in the ground fully will always be stronger than another plant that is not. This is the main reason why I don't recommend planting tropical plants closer to the winter, because they will take cold damage a lot easier than another plant that's fully rooted in the ground. But even though this mango has been in the ground for 4 years, it will still take cold damage in the winter forever. So I always have to do this. I will always have to do this for this plant. Now, thankfully, mango trees in my area, they don't grow that fast. They're slow growing plants. So all I gotta do every year, I just cut it off to make it fit within the same structure, and I reuse the same material every single year. Now let's talk about the cost. How much is it going to cost you to actually protect your plant? You have to understand, guys, PVC pipe, a few dollars per stick. So you're gonna need 4. So that alone, you're gonna probably spend maybe $15 or so. You're gonna need the frame on the top. That's gonna cost you, I would say, in PVC materials, I'll do the math and I'll post it on the screen to show you exactly what materials you need and where you can buy them from. But it's not going to be cheap, guys, especially if you have a lot of plants to protect. I have a lot of plants, so for me, you know, it's like an expense, but I like it. So it doesn't bother me. But remember, if you're going to grow tropical plants, make sure you save some money because it's gonna cost you a little bit. Now, heating the structure, let's go back over there and we can talk about more about the heaters that I use. All right, remember this one right here? This is 500 watts. You can buy the same heater anywhere online. I'll post a link on the screen so you can see exactly where I bought it from. I've been using the same heater for about 3 years now. I have several ones, and so far only one of them failed on me. The only thing that actually happened was if you look in the back, the fan failed, and you can replace that easily if you want to. But otherwise, the heating element inside, it still works. So these guys are reliable and they will last you a few seasons. You just have to make sure that if you get any rain in your area, that this doesn't get wet because it's gonna short, the breaker's gonna trip, and then this may completely fail on you. So if you're gonna put it inside your structure, make sure that it's waterproof. So this is an electric heater, 500 watts. The good thing about it, it's very easy to use. It's not that expensive. I think I pay about $25 for this one. The only problem you're going to have is you need electricity. And since this is 500 watts, you can only have about 3 of them running per circuit in your house. So obviously if you have a lot of plants and you're powering everything through the same outlet, it's just not gonna work out for more than 3 plants, because most people have 15 amps in their circuits in their houses. Now let's say your plants are a little further away. You can use this one right here. This is a propane heater, remember? So 3000 BTUs. This will heat up your structure, keep it warm in there. And it depends, you know, how cold it is outside, how much, you know, it's gonna increase the temperature inside the structure. Now I like this one, it works. The only problem I found with this propane heaters is they're not cheap. This one here is almost $60. And usually there are some more expensive ones out there. If you're looking for a smaller heater like this one, you're looking for a golf cart heater. That's exactly what you're looking for. The problem with this ones though is they don't last forever. They have a safety mechanism that shuts it off if it tips over like this, which is right here in the button. And then what usually happens is over time this is gonna fail, and then in order for the heater to work, you're gonna have to depress this button right here and keep it depressed. And there's really no way to fix that, and then it becomes useless. What I usually do is, I don't want to buy another heater. I have several of these ones anyway. But what I do is I get a clamp, and then I just clamp it in place right here, just like this. So it keeps the button depressed, and then the heater works. That's the only issue I found with this ones here. And it doesn't really matter how much money you spend, even the really expensive ones have the same issue as this one. The good thing about this one is you can move it around. You don't need a power source, and obviously it's a little more expensive. Now this one uses a 1 pound canister. This canister here, depending on the temperatures outside, it will last you overnight, about 8 to 10 hours. Here our day temperatures are not a problem. Our night temperatures are the main issue that I have here, so I only run it during nighttime. Now if you look at the canister, this one is a refillable canister. You can buy this online, and then when they go empty you can refill them. So you get a propane tank, you know, one of the ones you use on your grill, and you can refill it through that tank. There are other disposable canisters like this that you can buy, but the problem with this ones here is they're not rated to be refillable. So I mean, you can refill them, but it's not meant to be refillable, because they don't have a safety relief valve on the side. If you look over here, you see that little hole right there? So when you overfill this one, the propane will come out that little hole. Instead of pressurizing this canister, and you know, it may blow up on you. This one right here, it doesn't have a relief valve. So you can refill it if you want, but the problem is you just don't know when you're refilling it too much, and if you like really overdo it, you know, it's gonna blow up on you. That will be the only issue you have. Now obviously, if you refill it yourself, you're probably gonna be spending about $2 a night in propane. Now if you buy the disposable ones, these guys here are almost $4 each. So if you have a lot of plants, it's gonna get expensive. And let's see. Oh, another thing with this one, guys, if you have any questions about this setup right here, I can make another video where I can show you exactly how I refill these canisters and how to use them as well. Now the other option is this one right here. Now this one I use on trees. Like I said, I don't feel like building a structure, but this one puts out a lot of heat. On the low setting, this one's 9,000 BTUs. So I usually put it facing the tree that I'm trying to protect, and then I turn it on and leave it on all overnight. That usually keeps this whole area warm and prevents it from freezing. If your trees are big, and I mean, if they're too big to build a structure, that is the only other choice you have to protect them, besides using natural microclimates. So, so that's pretty much it, guys. If you have any questions, comment below, and I'll see you next time.